North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in our nation, with some statistics saying that North Carolina will be the 7th most populous state in a decade. With its expanding economy and population, North Carolina represents not just an ancestral home to many, but also the future to many others as well. But North Carolina is also plagued with many animal rights issues. Animal agriculture is a substantial part of its economy, and the Animal Legal Defense Fund ranks North Carolina as 34th in state animal protection laws. While many resources and focus remain centered on the West Coast and the Northeast, this symposium intends to highlight the existing activism and need for further action within the state, and how changes in North Carolina could affect and relate to other places beyond its borders and vice versa. Unfortunately, and not to knock UNC here, among law schools in the Triangle, Duke was the only one to successfully maintain its Animal Legal Defense Fund chapter throughout the pandemic, and I've personally observed interest in animal rights largely waning among some peers. But despite this decline, all of us in this room represent an awareness and empathy for non-human beings that continues to persist in this state, and a sentiment I hope will never leave North Carolina. And it makes me so happy to see you all. Thank you all for coming. It is my honor to introduce Lenore Braford from the Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge, here to give another presentation to you all.
All right, hello everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right. I'm so excited to be here today, especially speaking among so many wonderful other organizations who are doing such great work for farm animals and other animals in North Carolina and beyond. So my name is Lenore Braford. I am the founder and executive director of Piedmont Farm Animal Refuge. And the Refuge is a 501c3 nonprofit vegan farm animal sanctuary. Our mission is to provide lifelong care to rescued farm animals coming from abuse, neglect, and abandonment. We also educate the general public about the realities of the animal agriculture system, and we promote veganism through knowledge, support, and community. We currently care for chickens and turkeys, goats and sheep, ducks and geese, cows, and 1 guinea fowl. And right now, we are in what we're calling pig planning. So we recently were able to acquire an additional 25 acres of land. And so this year we are planning and fundraising and building some infrastructure to be able to start to rescue pigs. And that is particularly important for us. As you heard from Gail, North Carolina is number 3 in the country for number of pigs who are raised for food. And you could live your whole life here in North Carolina and never see a pig, even though there are over 8 million pigs in our state. And that has a lot to do with how they are housed and where they are housed. The how being inside these warehouses, you know, hidden away from us. If you go on the drive to Wilmington, you might smell the pig farms, but you're not gonna see them. Very hidden away, very tucked away. And then the where, mostly like we saw on Gail's map, in eastern North Carolina, where primarily people of color, people of low income are impacted by the pig farms. So that has to do with the property value rates, the smells, the diseases and illnesses that they get from these facilities. So not only does it affect these people, it affects all of us. You know, our river systems are all polluted with pig poop here in North Carolina. And there's a myriad of other environmental issues. So to be able to not only rescue pigs and provide them with a wonderful home, but also to talk about these issues that affect each and every one of us here living in our state is something that we are really excited to be able to do in the near future. So a few basic facts about the Refuge. We were founded in 2012. We currently have 114 animals, although we actually just rescued a chicken a few days ago, so that needs to be updated to 115. We have 45 acres, and we are located in Pittsburgh, North Carolina. It took me between 35 and 40 minutes to get here this morning, so it's really not that far away from some of the major cities, which is awesome if you want to come volunteer, visit, meet the animals. We are an accredited animal sanctuary through both the American Sanctuary Association and the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, or GFAS. And in 2023, we were awarded as the Outstanding Farm Animal Sanctuary of the Year by GFAS. Thank you. So what does accreditation mean? It's actually really important because the word sanctuary in and itself has no legal definition or meaning. So that means that all sorts of places, roadside zoos, pseudo-sanctuaries, petting zoos, they can just take that word sanctuary and slap it on their name. And that means that members of the general public have a really hard time understanding what organizations are doing good things for animals and which ones are exploiting animals, right? It's really difficult to tell. So accreditation is one way that you can make sure that you're telling the public. People from outside organizations have come in and they've looked at all the different aspects of your organization. And so accreditation means that you have very high marks in humane and responsible animal care, leadership within the sanctuary field, organizational sustainability, professionalism and ethics, and public engagement. And so I highly recommend GFAS's website because they have a really cool interactive map where you can search either by type of animal or by region, whether it's the states or they're actually a global organization. So you can find a sanctuary if you're on a trip traveling somewhere that's near you that you want to maybe go visit and support that you know has been vetted by an outside organization. Speaking of public outreach, in addition to rescuing animals, we also have an education and outreach program that includes tours and field trips. We offer free field trips to school groups, and we have monthly tours. The next one is actually a week from today, where you can come out, meet the animals, wander around. We have amazing tour guides that will teach you about them, and we try to partner with a lot of local vegan food trucks and vegan businesses so you get to enjoy some tasty food on your tour. Speaking of food, we also have vegan cooking classes throughout the year, either on site or around the Triangle. We go around to festivals like Pride festivals, Earth Day festivals, other organizations that are doing good work, and we give out free vegan food samples so people can try the most tastiest, newest products on the market. And we have free community vegan potlucks at the sanctuary on a quarterly basis, and it's a great opportunity to get together with like-minded people and enjoy some delicious food. Another thing about our organization that sets us a little bit apart is our animal-centered design approach. And this primarily comes from my partner, Paul, who is an architect, and he lends his time and talents to building and learning really what do these animals, what would they prefer, what would they like, where did they originally come from, and building very specific housing to meet those species needs. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later in the presentation, but you can see this is an image of our duck and goose houses, and they end up looking different than a traditional barn because they're really trying to reflect the values and ethics around what a sanctuary is, and that means individualized care. So they're going to end up looking individual. And one of the awesome things about this is that we're very honored that a documentary film is coming out about our animal-centered design work with director Allison Argo called Forever Home. And to give you guys a little bit of a sense of the refuge and to see some of our beautiful animal faces, we're going to play the trailer for that film.
It's really special to be able to rescue these individuals who have gone through so much and finally give them a wonderful life.
Oh, I guess it really wasn't a happily ever after. I'm sorry, give me a second. Oh, you turned off the projector? Oh, I'm so sorry. We're not making sense.
Sorry about that.
I got a master's in architectural design and just applied it to animals. We're trying to give them the respect they deserve in the design process.
We do our best, but no sanctuary, no matter how big you are, can take all the animals that need homes. And that can be really hard.
I have enough hay for 4 weeks, so I'm trying to find forever homes for them. None of them deserve to be slaughtered and eaten.
So Forever Home is actually going to be screened in DC in May of this year at the Animal and Vegan Advocacy Summit. So come check it out.
I may need to.
Might need you.
There we go.
So a lot of our work at the Refuge is all about making connections. Most people don't really know how these animals are treated. You know, we're here in North Carolina, never seeing all of the 8 million pigs. So it's all about getting people connected with who these animals are as individuals and starting to care about them, and starting to learn about the issues that they face. So to quiz you guys on your animal knowledge, we're going to have a trivia question. Maybe, possibly. I don't know that the clicker works anymore. So.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All right, so how many chickens are killed for meat each year in the US? Do you think it is A, 1 billion, B, 9 billion, or C, 14 billion? If you think it's A, raise your hand. Nobody. If you think it's B, raise your hand. And if you think it's C, raise your hand. So the correct answer is actually B, 9 billion. And whether we're talking about 9 billion or 12 billion, these numbers are really, really hard for us to understand and really empathize with. Like, what does 9 billion really mean? So I'm going to tell you the story of one of those 9 billion chickens. And this is a story of a little bird named Hope. So one day we were at the Refuge doing what we normally do, feeding the animals, cleaning out their areas, giving everybody their meds, and a woman pulled into our driveway rather quickly and got out of the car, and in her arms was this little bundle of white feathers. And she said, well, I was just driving on the highway and I saw something off to the side of the road. When I pulled over, I realized it was a little chicken. So I've brought her here. What can you do? And when I saw Hope, I said something that I hardly ever say. I said, well, we're going to do everything we can, but I don't know if she's going to make it. And I have learned over the years that never give up on a chicken. Chickens are extremely amazing and resilient animals. But poor little Hope was in terrible shape. She couldn't lift her head. She had blood coming out of her eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and half the side of her head was twice the size of normal. And so Hope had actually fallen out of a truck on her way to slaughter, and she may have actually been hit by another vehicle because her injuries were so great. So we rushed her to the vet. The vet gave her medication, injections, and said, you know, that's all we can do for her. You guys take her home and let's see how it goes. So we took her back to the Refuge. We got her all snugly in our clinic, and we waited to see what would happen. And, you know, Hope wasn't very responsive. She wasn't opening her eyes. She wasn't moving. So she needed round-the-clock care. She got tube feedings. She got fluids. And little by little, we started to see this bird show signs of life. First, she started to open one eye and look at us, and then she would close it again. And then she started to open the other eye, and I remember when she took her first bite of food, it was some canned pumpkin we had in there. All of us were celebrating, and we knew that she was on the road to recovery. And soon enough, it was time for Hope to go outside and meet some other chicken friends for the first time. And when she did, it was the first time that she saw grass in her whole life. And it was the first time that she felt the sun coming down and streaming on her feathers. And it was the first time that she felt the earth between her toes. And she could scratch around and do all those things that chickens love because of how she had been housed in these giant warehouses, out of sight, out of mind. But little Hope made a remarkable recovery, and she lives with us to this day, actually with her best friend Bren, who's another chicken with disabilities, and I'm going to show you a little video of them enjoying some enrichment at the refuge. Yeah.
They're more talented than me.
We're very lucky we have some musical geniuses.
Oh, wait, oh no.
So another quiz question for you. Where are chickens originally native to? If you think it is A, Eastern Europe, raise your hand. If you think it is B, Southeast Asia, raise your hand. And if you think it is C, Northern Canada, raise your hand. All right, well, you guys are well informed. The answer is B, Southeast Asia. Chickens are descended from an animal called the red jungle fowl, who is a rainforest animal. And at the refuge, we take that into account with our animal-centered design approach. So their outdoor habitats are very jungly. We have lots of trees, bushes, vines, and edibles for them to enjoy and be in as much of a natural habitat as possible. So the next story I'm going to tell you about is a little calf named Teddy. And Teddy is what we refer to in the sanctuary world as a dairy boy. So Teddy was born on a dairy farm, and on dairy farms, the females are impregnated, they give birth, and then the males are really not useful because they're not producing milk. And so they're either shot on sight, they may be disposed of otherwise, or they may be sold to the veal industry. Now, luckily for Teddy, that didn't happen. A man decided to purchase him to keep in his backyard. But unlucky for Teddy, that was not a good situation either. And this is what Gail spoke a little bit about earlier and what came to be known as the Garner cruelty case right here in North Carolina in Wake County. And we're going to watch one of the news stories about that case. Oh, but first, I'm going to quiz you. When do you think calves are separated from their mothers on dairy farms? If you think it is A, a few hours after birth, raise your hand. Do you think it is B, a few days after birth? Raise your hand. And if you think it is C, a few weeks after birth, raise your hand. Sorry to say that the answer is A, typically a few hours after birth. And these unfortunate calves are in one of those veal facilities. So let's watch the...
Well, Lauren, this is a very fluid investigation. In fact, animal control officers back on scene today counting the number of animals impacted. This part of a days-long process.
The sounds of a farm present at the end of this cul-de-sac in a quiet residential neighborhood.
It's disturbing on a big level.
This neighbor, who asked not to be identified, sharing pictures of goats coming up to her doorstep.
For as many animals that they have, they should have more acreage. And we've even tried to tell him to alternate fields where you have the front field growing, back field, have them tend to, and then you alternate so that you can keep making sure that they have food. But that's, as you can see, it's just kind of bare.
The Wake County Sheriff's Office identifying two men, Ronald Kearney and Mohammed Dwayderry, as caretakers of the livestock. They neither own the property. A warrant for Kearney lists 90 livestock were emaciated and injured, requiring 3 to be euthanized. In court, we learned one animal died as officers were on scene. He faces 90 felony counts of animal cruelty and is being held at the Wake County Detention Center on a $90,000 bond.
Could you please lower it or let me? I'm not going anywhere, sir. I really don't even know what I've done wrong.
Dwayderry faces 1 misdemeanor count of animal cruelty.
It was nice to see that the animals have received some sort of justice, but you can't help the ones that perished.
A Wake County spokesperson telling me that 2 calves have been taken to the NC State Veterinary School. The Sheriff's Office adding that other animals that could be saved sent off to rehabilitation centers. At this point, we're still working to learn the exact number of animals as part of this overarching investigation and their condition. We'll share along those details once they become available. I'm Michael Perchik, ABC 11 Eyewitness News.
So the Garner cruelty case was actually about 200 animals that were being kept on less than 2 acres of land. And a bunch of organizations were involved with this. We were on the scene helping to catch and triage animals. There were a lot of body parts and dead animals and many, many scared animals on this property. And it was a very frustrating case because these animals had been slowly starving and dying for a period of time before law enforcement and county officials were able to go in and make a difference. So, you know, the most terrible situations have to be put on farm animals before any kind of legal action can be taken. And it's really great that the animals that are still alive got to be rescued, but there were so many there that it was too late for them. So when we took in Teddy and his companion Atlas, they were very thin. I would call their condition skeletal, and probably were days and weeks away from passing themselves. Luckily, we were able to take in them as well as 2 goats. And now that Teddy has been living with us, they have been getting bottle fed and they are growing well and they're fitting in with the herd. And we're actually now weaning them, which they don't like, but they're getting to be huge babies, and so they're really thriving. So how long do you think cows can live if they are given proper care? If you think it is A, 15 years, raise your hand. B, 20 years. Okay, and C, 25 years. All right, and the answer is C, 25 years. And that's something that as a sanctuary, we have to think very carefully and seriously about, because when we rescue an animal, we are promising them lifelong care. And so when you're taking in a young 1-month-old calf like Teddy or Atlas, that's a long time. So we have to make sure that we're prepared to follow through on that promise that we gave them. So the last story I'm going to tell you today is about a goat named Sweet Mama. And Sweet Mama was living in North Carolina on a dairy farm for goats. And just like cows on these farms, the mothers are impregnated, the babies are taken away, and then they get to a certain age where their milk production is just not as high enough for them to be profitable. And that's exactly what happened to Sweet Mama. So she got to be around age 7, and she wasn't producing enough milk anymore, and so she was sent off to a slaughter auction. And that would have been the end of her story, like it is for so many animals. But in Sweet Mama's case, she was a fighter. She ended up escaping that slaughter auction by jumping 2 fences and running across a highway. And she was found on a neighboring farm by some cows. And you can see Sweet Mama here in the middle and some very confused cows wondering what kind of a cow this might be that's wandered onto their pasture. Luckily, she was also found by a kind woman who was actually coming to this farm to feed a colony of feral cats. And when she saw Sweet Mama's condition, being very thin, she couldn't walk very well, she took pity on her, and she started to bring food for Sweet Mama too. Now the surprise was, 2 weeks into this, she arrived with food for the cats and for Sweet Mama, to find her in the middle of giving birth to not 1, but 2 baby goats, who came to be known as Ace and Ivy. So Sweet Mama had actually been pregnant when she was sent to slaughter. And when she escaped, she not only saved her life, but she saved the lives of her kids. And the 3 of them lived together at the Refuge until Sweet Mama passed away. We used to refer to them as the 3-headed goat because they were all tangled together and you could never tell where one started and the other ended. But Ace and Ivy still live with us to this day. They are her legacy, and they were the first kids that in her whole life she got to nurse and raise and keep. So we were really happy, even though Sweet Mama didn't live as long as she could have due to her past use, that at least she got some years to finally be with her family. So a little goat FAQ for you. True or false? Goats are picky eaters. If you think the answer is true, raise your hand. If you think the answer is false, raise your hand. All right, and the answer is actually True. Contrary to popular belief that goats will eat anything, that might be true if you're a goat who's trying to just make it and doesn't have a lot of good care. Goats are very creative. But our goats at the refuge, man, you'll come around with a favorite treat, half of them will turn their noses up, and God forbid you drop it on the ground where the poop is. They don't even have the 3-second rule, it is now dirty. So in thinking about being a sanctuary and housing these animals, we really have to think about like where are most of these animals housed and how can we kind of be an alternative to that. So obviously the vast majority of farm animals are housed in the industrial system. And these are systems where human profit is prioritized. It's a one size fits all, however many animals we can cram, maximum per square foot, we want to make the most money on them. Human convenience is a top priority in these facilities. There is generally an absence of nature, which creates a very horrible environment for these animals. And ultimately, these animals are being viewed as commodities. Contrasting that to animal-centered design, we think a lot about how design both reflects and influences our cultural values. So if people see pigs crammed into a house, then they believe that that is how pigs live, and that is all pigs need, and that's just the way the world is. If we see animals, in little tanks on display for us for entertainment, well, that's all we know of those whales. So at the refuge, we really recognize and understand that design has power, and it has power to change people's perceptions. And so through the animal design process, we're hoping not only to provide a wonderful home for these animals, but also to impact people who come to the refuge and see a new model for how animals can live. And some of the basic principles of animal-centered design, we always want to design for the animals first. We know that human caregivers have to go into these spaces and, clean them and give them food, but we're always thinking about the animals' needs as the forefront. We like to think about thrive versus survive. So a lot of these animals were barely surviving when they were first rescued, and our goal is to have them thrive. So what does that look like in a housing space? We always want to adopt the animal's perspective, so we don't want to take our own ideas from, being a human of, well, maybe the animals would like this, or maybe they would like that. Well, I like this, so animals might like that. We try to erase that from our minds and instead come from the animal's perspective. We want to think about physical versus psychological safety. Another way you can think about that is what makes you safe versus what makes you feel safe. And there's a big difference between those two things and something we think a lot about at the refuge. We want to respond to natural flows and elements. So what kind of materials are we using? How are we orienting the buildings to take advantage of nice cool breezes and less sun in the summer and more sun in the winter when it's colder? We want to encourage a wild habitat, so we want to learn who are these animals' ancestors, like the red jungle fowl, or what kinds of habitats did they come from, and how can we provide as close to that as possible within our sanctuary grounds. And style is secondary, so although the buildings may end up looking interesting and unique, that's really secondary. Really, we're focused on what are the animals' needs and how can we translate that into structures. So one example of animal-centered design, if we're talking about goats, we can look at the domesticated goat's ancestor, the mountain goat, and we know that these animals are climbers, they love to get up high, and in fact they like to sleep at the very top of a cliff or boulder where they have a sense of safety from predators. And then how we translate this into the refuge property is what we call the goat bunks. So the goats have 3 different levels in their houses so they can get up high, and in fact most of our goats go up there to sleep at night because it's a natural instinct for them to want to sleep elevated up off the ground. So that's one example of animal-centered design in action. So how can you get involved with the refuge? We very much welcome you to visit us. Like I mentioned, that tour is coming up, or you can come to some of our other future tours or events. You can volunteer with us. You can become an animal care volunteer. You can do general volunteering. You can help with our Sunday house cleaning crew, or you can volunteer with us off-site at many of our festivals and other events. We also encourage you to support us. So you can make a one-time donation, or you can become our very best friend and become a recurring donor. And you can do that by being an animal sponsor, joining us on our Patreon page, or you can become a sanctuary sustainer. So I want to thank you guys so much for having me here today, and I would love to answer any of your questions. Thanks so much. Yes.
What's needed to get the pigs up and running?
Yep, lots and lots of money. No, but really infrastructure. So the 25 acres that we acquired is a beautiful wooded area, and it's been called a piggy paradise by several pig experts who come to look at it. So they're going to love it back there. But there's no water, there's no power. We did put a perimeter fence in, so we got some progress done, and we started a road back there. So we really need to get some of that base infrastructure in. Then we'll build the pig houses themselves, and then we'll be able to rescue. So we're chipping away at that goal, and we invite people to join in and help us reach that. So thank you.
Yes, how much do, I know the animal welfare world is very small. How much do you all network with other farm sanctuaries? I know of 2 in Virginia when I lived there, that you can kind of, I don't know, coordinate maybe like a tri-state fundraiser, or do you reach out to them when you have an overload of animals?
That's a great question. We definitely work with other sanctuaries. In fact, we just went down to visit a sanctuary in Florida on something we're calling a sanctuary swap, where we send a small amount of staff to them, they send staff to us, and it's really a learning opportunity because there is a lot of knowledge about farm animal care, especially health care, that only exists in the sanctuary world. And so if somebody's trying a new medication or a new procedure that's helping pigs, overcome arthritis or some of the other terrible things that their bodies go through because of their breeding, we want to know about that, and we want that to be shared among other sanctuaries. So we are definitely on good terms with a lot of sanctuaries nationally. I myself was an intern at 2 farm sanctuaries in New York before starting the Refuge. So definitely communicating, talking, when big animal cases come up, getting on the phone with those partners who are out of state and getting them to help out, like at the Garner case. Those are all things that we try to do, and I think it's only can make the sanctuary community stronger if more of us can work together. So.
Hi, so we had the great pleasure to volunteer at Piedmont last month, and I noticed that there was this black goat that was singled out. It appeared to have health issues. I wanted to know what exactly is happening with this goat and how are you guys taking care of it?
I'm not sure which goat you might be talking about. We have a black goat named Elliot, but he's the leader. Oh, Lily.
Take care of this goat in not like issues.
Yes, okay, I know who you're talking about now. So Lily is white and black patchy goat. She's actually our oldest goat. So she's 19, she's gonna be turning 20 this year. And so she had a cancerous mass on her neck. And so we had it surgically removed. But that site is still it's still having an issue, and unfortunately the vets think it might be coming back. And so she had an incident where she was given a regular treat, and then she was kind of coughing on it. And so because of the location of the mass, there's kind of a concern that it might be a problem for her to eat certain foods. So you probably saw a little sign that said, make sure you don't feed Lily big pieces of carrots and things like that, because we just want to keep on top of that as we're continuing to care for her and make sure she's not going to have any issues. So yeah, those are some of the things that come up with lifelong care. A lot of these animals, they're getting up into their teens where you never see them in these factory systems. And so they'll have some of the same issues that we have. They'll develop cancers, they'll develop arthritis. And so we just have to kind of, take that as it comes and do everything we can. So yeah, thank you for volunteering. Yes.
First of all, as a person who was raised on a small family farm, thank you. And secondly, in companion animals, we spay and neuter everything. What happens to the farm animals? Is their reproduction cycle stopped?
Great question. As a sanctuary, we absolutely do not breed animals, so we do not allow them to be reproducing on site. Every once in a while, we rescue and somebody's already pregnant. So we had a group of sheep who came from a butchery that was shut down, and 3 of them ended up being pregnant on site. It was great timing because the babies were born at sanctuary instead of at the butchery where they were being sold for lamb meat. So that's a rare situation, but typically with the mammals, we will neuter the males. it's a less invasive surgery. The only exception to that would be for pigs. The females, actually, it's recommended that they're spayed because they can develop a lot of reproductive cancers and malfunctions in their age just because of who they are as a type of animal. For our bird residents, we simply pick up eggs twice a day, and for some of our chickens, we give them a reproductive implant to actually shut down their reproductive system, which is awesome for them. It's very expensive, and it lasts anywhere between 3 to 9 months per bird, so we can't do it for all of our chickens, but if somebody starts to have a reproductive issue, we want to shut down their system and give them the best chance at a long life, so that's how we handle that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your work in the presentation. I'm curious, with the design planning, do you also incorporate elements of non-lethal deterrence for native wildlife? Is that something that's part of the consideration around the sanctuary?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. Absolutely. We always want to think about the animals that were on that property before we even came there, especially with our land expansion. We have a little beaver friend who lives on our pond there. And so we did a lot of work with restoring the dam to make sure that, you know, he would be as least disturbed as possible. But yeah, we do have to worry about wild animals as predators. And we take that really seriously because, you know, the animals we care for are domesticated. So it would really be unfair to put them into any situation where, you know, they could be preyed upon by wild animals. So mostly how we accomplish that is just most of our animals come inside every night in predator-proof housing. But we do have some like fence extensions and things like that that also help keep the foxes and the raccoons and the possums kind of out of some of those areas. We actually have had a number of wildlife rehabbers release animals at our sanctuary, and we try to keep some of the sanctuary unmowed. So that's very intentional because a lot of these little bushy areas are a really important habitat for songbirds, for little rodents and other animals that use those spaces. So if you come to the refuge and it's not a completely mowed flat landscape, there's a reason behind that. So thanks.